Welcome to the LifePro podcast, where today I have the pleasure of having Jeevan Matharu as my podcast guest. He is a transformational coach, author, and financial advisor. He is the author of the book, Become a Person of Value. Today, our topic is finding your purpose. But before we get into that, welcome, Jeevan. How you doing?
Hi, Owen. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the great introduction.
So why don't you start out and tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, your journey, before we get into the topic.
Yeah, so I think from the journey perspective, which I think is quite important as well, was that I was always quite intelligent at school. Um, I'm in the top 2% of IQ, so obviously learning was quite easy for me. And as with everything, a blessing can also be a hindrance in some respects. And because I found stuff so easy, I used to mess around, be naughty, find ways to amuse myself, as it were. And actually got thrown out of school, expelled. And I didn't really still learn my lesson that yes, you might have a Ferrari, but unless you can actually drive the Ferrari and you have these other softer skills like discipline, focus, the curiosity to learn, the want to become better, time management skills, all of these softer skills, you weren't going to become anything in life. And I didn't realize that until a little bit later on. When I've been through university, the same sort of thing happened, not putting my head down, not fulfilling my potential essentially. And as with anyone, sometimes it just takes a day to flip the switch, doesn't it? And I was working full time, traveling 6 hours a day for meetings, 6 hours worth of meetings in a day. And I was initially, when I started the job, during that 6 hours, I was listening to the same songs over and over again. And I started to ask myself questions because in order to improve, in order to build a business, build a podcast, write a book, we have to ask ourselves questions. And I asked myself, is there a better use of this 6 hours than listening to the same 50, 60, 100 tunes that I've been listening to for the past 10 years? And I started to come to the realization that there was. Could I learn more about goal setting or selling or learn a new language or self improvement, whatever it's going to be? And that's really where my life took a different trajectory. And I got into that space and wrote my first book, which is Become a Person of Value, as you discussed, which we'll probably get into at some point. So really, that's the journey that I got to. And during that initial part, it wasn't that I was ever unemployed or things like that. I was still working 7 days a week, but I was still not fulfilling my potential. And that's where it's not about good versus bad. It's about you versus yourself and how can you become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I love that. So, uh, tell us more. Tell us more about your book. What's, you know, what's the premise?
So I've read quite a few books like Think and Grow Rich and books about goal setting and books about mentality and focus and motivation. But what I didn't find, and again, this is where we ask ourselves the questions, I was like, where is a book that encompasses all of the key areas that make up a great person? There wasn't
Mhm.
one. There was ones about spirituality, there was ones about communication skills, ones about psychology,
Yeah,
but ones about how to live the morning right. But there wasn't really a book that had all of those areas. So I was like, okay, let me create one. So I created the book, and I've got a copy here, but there's 25, 30 chapters that cover
yeah,
some of those points. So
right.
how to motivate yourself, psychology, goal setting, communication skills, the morning routine, attitude and mentality, the different types of males there are, obviously alpha, beta, gamma, etc., and what the characteristics of those are. And there are obviously many more chapters in there as well that timekeeping, for example, how to maximize your time. Because if you're going to be the best version of yourself, don't you need to know all of those things together? Because there's no
Right.
point in you being really motivated if you're wasting time because you're still not going to get the best results. So that's really where, excuse me, that book came from. And I've actually written my second book and I've started my third book as well. Now, the second one's not on sale as yet, but it will be hopefully within the next few months.
That's fantastic. So, our topic for today is finding your purpose in life. And I find that, people that I know, that I've talked to, at some point they get to a stage of their life. It could be early on, it could be later. Typically, it's when they have to go through like major events in life that they hit a kind of realization that, hey, what is my purpose in life? What am I here to accomplish? How do I leave a legacy for myself? So talk to me a little bit about that. Is it normal for us to start pondering our life's purpose? What do you find in from your own experience causes that to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably the most important question that we ask ourselves. Yes, we can talk about, why we're here, who's God, etc. But asking what am I actually going to do with my life? What is my purpose? Is going to be the most productive question that you have. And the difference between humans and all other species is that they can only become themselves. So a tree can only become the best version of an oak tree it can. A dog can only become the best hunter it can be. With humans, we have a much wider spectrum of what we can become, but it is within a remit though. Because I could say I would love to become the fastest man in the world, but because I'm 5'10", it's very unlikely that's going to be the case. So, in order to find our purpose, we have to establish a couple of things. What are we good at naturally? Because I think that does make a difference. Uh, Two, what are we passionate about? Because again, if we're good at something and we're passionate about it, we're more likely to want to do that on a regular basis. And three, how do we improve our ability to work hard? Because we've all heard the saying that, you have to work harder to achieve more results, and that is true. But if you're working hard at something you enjoy versus something that you don't enjoy, there's going to be a huge discrepancy in terms of what you get as a result longer term. So Roger Federer is an example I like to use. He went into tennis because he was obviously good at it as a child, naturally. He enjoyed doing it, and he was willing to work hard at that because he was good and he enjoyed it. And he then became a tennis player. He didn't go into it thinking of the money that he would make at 20, 25 years of age. I'll think about the millions of pounds that I'm going to make. Because in order to make the money, you actually have to not think about the money in some instances. You have to think about the value. How can we make a better product? How can we reach more of an audience? How can we bring the costs down and make it more efficient? How can we put more time and effort into what we're doing? How can we improve our fitness? All of these things that we need to improve on, which will bring us the results later on. So, in answer to your question, we need to find out what's going to drive us and why it's going to drive us. Because not everyone is the same. Your gifts are different to the gifts of Mr. Smith down the street. And we need to establish that. And again, we have to ask ourselves these questions. Like, for example, the book. I try to find something, and instead of me saying, oh, that's a problem, that book's not out there, I decided to make a solution. And that came down to the questions I asked, or I asked myself, could I be the one who fills this solution or plugs this problem and creates that solution? And again, that's something that you can ask yourself in your own life.
Yeah, but how do we get to that point? I mean, a lot of people choose a career or choose a path that's maybe most convenient for them, or like I said, out of convenience, and they get to a point where they're just kind of stuck in the mundane, and it's hard for them to make a major change, especially when you get later in life, you get a little bit more established, you start having family. How do you get to that point where you build the courage to make a change, to find your path?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I think that with our initial career decisions, again, we go into it for the wrong reasons. Oh, what are my friends studying? What city do I want to live in? What's going to pay me the most money over the long term? And the reason that they have those feelings later on is because they made the wrong decision or made the career choice based on the wrong decision early on. And they are now at that point where they've picked up all of these responsibilities. They've got a mortgage, they've got kids, they've got a car on payment, etc., etc. And they realize that they are unfulfilled with their situation.
Mhm.
So there's only really a few options from there, isn't there? One is that you start an extra side hustle in something that you enjoy. The second is that you find a new job, new career. Yeah. Or you quit everything altogether, sell everything, and start a business from scratch.
Yeah.
I mean, what other options do you have there? And obviously, with the third option, if you are going to do that and you have got these responsibilities, there's a lot more risk on the table, isn't there? But is there a risk and reward ratio there?
Yeah.
And I think throughout life, though, we came onto purpose, and I don't think there's always one clear cut answer. Our purpose can be in blocks, especially with the fast changing nature of today's world. You could have a 10-year purpose of, right, I'm going to become a professional athlete in this 10 years. Once that's happened, Mike Tyson, for example, that was his purpose, to become a world champion boxer. After that, he's now got a new purpose that he's focused in. And what that basically means is that we have to have something we are directing all our efforts to, all of our daily habits, our routines, our mental focus. We need something that we are aiming at, whether it's a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. I'll give another example. If you're going to be running a marathon next year, what do you need to do in order to get there? Well, it's pretty simple, isn't it? We know we need to run 26 miles in a year's time. What do we need to do by month 11, month 10, month 6, month 3, etc.? And in order to hit those targets, what do we need to do on a day-to-day basis? How many miles? What does that diet need to look like? If we then do these things, month 12 is going to be a breeze. We don't need to focus on month 12 too much once we've set out the plan. And that, again, comes down to your purpose, what drives you. Establishing that is actually the hardest part. Most people are lost. They don't really know themselves that well. And this is an interesting thing that I read the other day. People think they know so much about so many different topics, but they don't even know themselves. If you don't know your own self, you don't know what you want, you don't know what you want to achieve, you don't know what you want to establish. And I'm no different. I've got hundreds of things I'd love to do. I'd love to be someone who travels the world, someone who writes books, someone who is on TV in some vein, someone who's got a podcast, someone who advises people, someone who is a sports, because I do judo as well, someone who gets somewhere in sport. Sometimes, and I'm going to use myself as an example, sometimes that's a bad thing when you've got too many things on the go. Can you reduce that and focus more on one thing? And it's a difficult thing to establish, really. And everyone's going through this stage in their own life.
Yeah.
Because when I was a financial advisor, and I still am, but in terms of the early stages, that was my main focus. But as I've developed, as I've changed, I think one of the Stoic phrases is something along the lines of, when you've walked into a river and you've come back out, neither the man nor the river is the same ever again.
Right.
Because the river's changed. You've moved something within the bed of the river. The water vector has changed, and you've come out a different person as well. And that's the same with life. So every experience you go through, you have then a different perspective. The COVID situation, I'm sure you'll know this yourself, Amy. Your perspective on life 100% changed during COVID.
100%. Yeah.
So did everyone else's. And it's about how we use that in order to plan our future. And again, aiming towards something. Success is a worthy success, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, according to Earl Nightingale. So if you're progressively realizing a worthy ideal, you are a success. If you are going towards a destination, you are a success. It's the people that don't have a destination in mind, that are cruising through life, that aren't successful. And we define our own success. Either you could want the Dan Bilzerian lifestyle, where you've got hundreds of women, gambling, spending money in that respect, or you could just want a simple family life out in the countryside where you farm your own crop and you spend loads of time with your kids. Whichever of those you prefer is a success, and you have to define what that means to you.
Yeah. So speaking of kids and grandchildren, is that a major factor when we look at, hey, what I want to do, what I am pulled to do as my life's purpose? How much of that is a factor, like, well, security and legacy for our kids and their kids? How much of a factor is that?
So I think with any purpose, we need to ask ourselves why we want to do it. Do we want to be world champion because it's for our selfish reasons, or is it, as you said, for the monetary aspect to provide to the kids? Whatever it is that's going to motivate you, it doesn't really matter. But we need to have one of those reasons. Is it just to be cocky once you've done it and said, look, I'm this millionaire and you're not? What is the main reason? Is it just to be able to have, and this is a lot of, for a lot of people, this is the reason. Is it so you can date a better person?
Yeah.
Because if you're earning more and you're more famous, you're more likely to attract another partner. You've mentioned legacy a couple of times. I just want to take a slight tangent on that. legacy for me is not just what you provide for your kids. If we look at your death, when you die, that's the first of your deaths. You also have a second death, as far as I'm concerned, and that's when people forget knowing
Yeah,
who you ever were. So Jesus, Muhammad Ali, Mahatma Gandhi. I could list off hundreds of people there.
they live forever.
They live until people forget their name ever existed. Alexander the Great, um, Genghis Khan. And the question you ask yourself is, what legacy can I leave? Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to be infamous. You don't want to be like Jack the Ripper or Jimmy Savile. That's not a good legacy to live, because yes, you are famous, but you are infamous. So you are remembered for the wrong reasons.
Right.
So what can you do today that is going to leave you a positive legacy that your kids or your grandkids or great grandkids can look back and say, oh yeah, this is my dad or granddad or great granddad, as opposed to just looking at the short term. Oh, I want to be able to send them to college.
Yeah.
Thinking big is important. You will never exceed how big you can think. You're
Yeah.
never going to build an Amazon if you think about, you know, uh, going to your 9 to 5, and that's
Yeah.
all you ever think about. You have to think big. And again, we don't always have to think about the money, though. We have to think about what we're going to provide. So Amazon, they went out thinking, how can we be better than everyone else and get things to you the same day or next day for a better price?
Right.
Once you've killed that off and you've established that, the money and the value will come there, because, as the title of my book suggests, you have to become valuable first, become a person of value, or become a business of value. It's the only way. You have to have something that someone else wants, and that's a value, that's a skill, that's something you have inherently that will bring you revenue from that endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of legacy, I think of maybe setting an example for my kids. So if I find my life's purpose and I'm happy and I have a better life, I'm laying a better blueprint for my kids to follow the same path that I did. So I guess maybe legacy and influence kind of go hand to hand, as how I imagine it. Um,
Yeah.
and I think we owe ourselves uh the right to find our purpose in life, the right to be happy, so that we can take care of other people as well.
Yeah, I think with the kid example, obviously we're here to ensure that we are educating them in such a way that they have a good mindset, that they are going down the right path. And yeah, whether you want to use legacy or another word, I think that's absolutely correct. I don't know if you're familiar as well with something called ikigai, what the
Mhm.
Japanese use to establish purpose. So they have, I can't remember exactly what the sides are, but it's like the things the world needs, things I enjoy doing, things I can be paid for, and there's one other part as well. And it's like a Venn diagram with overlapping parts. So you can basically say, well, this is what my 9 to 5 is, but then this is what I do outside of my hobbies. This is what I'm going to do for my vocation, etc. And you work down into the ikigai, which is in the middle. And it's a really good tool actually to try and
Uh,
work out what your purpose is,
yeah,
because I'm a strong believer that skill stacking is very important nowadays. So before, you might have just, and it's still the case today, obviously. Don't say that it's. I'm not saying that it's not. That you might have been the best sprinter in the world. Yeah, you might be the best tennis player in the world. But now, because things are so remote, we're learning so much so quickly. The skill stackers are ones that are going to get quite far. If you have the ability to start a business, run a business, but you can also code, so you can code all of your own stuff. That's a very unique set of skills that's going to give you some sort of
advantage.
advantage. If you are a good speaker, but you also have incredible knowledge in a particular area, could you use those together to be a public speaker? That's just a couple of examples. There's hundreds of ways that you can use your skills. So a good idea is to write down what your skills, and see if those collectively can give you a niche. So if you're very good at networking and you're good at speaking to people, but you can also cook a banging chicken, could you start like a chicken van or a restaurant? Because you can network, you can already get 150 people to come into the restaurant, and then it's your job to actually keep them and retain them as customers. So we all have resources, and the problem with individuals, again, including myself, we're all guilty of this, is not using the resources we have available. It's not that we have no resource, it's that we're not using them to their full potential.
Right. I love that. And I think hopefully we're educating people and giving them a platform to actually take the time and reflect on what they want in life. Do you feel like you have found your purpose in life?
So I think I'm about there. But you ask me, life's very easy in hindsight, isn't it? You could ask me that 5 years ago, I'd be like, or 8 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to be this person forever. And now again, it's maybe part of those 10-year segments, because life
Right.
moves so fast these days. Things change, but at the moment, I'm focused on delivering these kind of messages on the podcast scene, writing. As I said, I've wrote my second book. I'm on my third book at the moment. So yeah, at this moment, that is my purpose. But things change, as you said. Life
Yeah.
events may happen that change my perspective on things.
Y-
It might be that I don't know. I get up one morning and I realise that this is a new direction I want to head. So yeah, I think that we do, as I said, have different purposes during our life, in some respects. Because if you've just had a child, for example, regardless of your career, in some respects, your kids and family are your main focus. Now, what you may do is you may sort of use your career intertwined with that family to say, actually, I've got this job now. Well, I was doing it to buy a Ferrari. Now I'm changing that to ensure that, as you said, you're leaving money for the kids, you'll be able to take them on holidays to Disneyland or whatever. But as we said about the resources and using your resources resourcefully, the same goes. Whatever you've got going on in your life is going to be directed towards your primary purpose, whether it's your kids, whether it's traveling, whatever it's going to be. And whatever drives you is going to drive you, and we need to have something that does drive us.
Yeah. So with all this, LifePro podcast is about, the concept is there is a manual for everything except for life. And I think you're doing your part by, educating and writing books. And one thing I ask everybody on the show is, what's one thing that you want to teach the world? So if you could teach the world one thing, what would it be?
So I would say that if we look at society at the moment, and this is just something I thought about today. I mean, if you'd asked me this yesterday, I probably would have just talked about, becoming your best self. The thought I had earlier is that, okay, everyone complains about how society is. People are always on their phones. People don't talk as much anymore. People are too selfish. People are getting overweight and fat and obese, and we go out too much and we talk shit, and we are reducing our intellectual capacity. We don't speak properly anymore. We watch the same shit TV shows. We read less as individuals. And we can ask 100 people if that's the case, and 99 would agree with that. Why do you not just be or why don't you become the person who, because society is full of individuals. So if you change yourself and someone else changes their self, and you as a collective within your group of friends all change yourself to be better people, so you're not doing these things we just talked about, society would improve by default.
Right.
So instead of complaining that society is this, society is that, society is just a reflection of individuals. So on that vein, if you just change yourself as an individual, number one is you are contributing to society, and number two, you'll probably see a different side of society anyway, because we attract, what we are, and we see things that we are. And there's been hundreds of people talk about this. If you're fat, unhealthy, and depressed, you're more likely to hang around with people who are fat, ugly, and depressed. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're rich and you work 12 hours, 15 hours a day, and you're in good shape and you're charismatic, you're more likely to fall into circles in that respect. So
Yeah.
maybe it's not society at large, maybe it's just your sort of local
Yeah.
society that is the problem. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. So making yourself better and surrounding yourself with more positive people that add value to your life. So instead of complaining about the problems, to make the changes required.
Yeah.
So I
I
love
think
that.
a good way to think about this is Jim Rohn. So I don't know if you're familiar with who Jim Rohn is.
Oh yeah, I
He
listen
said
to them all
something
the
along
time.
the lines of, Yeah, so El Show said to him, look, make a list of the reasons that you're not successful. And he writes down the government, the weather, taxes,
Yeah,
etc., manager, the place, industry I work. And he comes back and he says, well, you're not on the list. It's you, because we can take Jeff Bezos. And look, I'm not saying all of those things can be, might not be a hindrance, but Jeff Bezos has the same issues. He has the same economic issues. He has the same weather issue. He has the same tax implications. He's got the same time management implications. He's got all of these same things, but he's doing this and you're not. So you are the issue. No one, nothing or no one else.
I love it.
Everyone's got their own burdens they're carrying, but that's up to you to grow through that. It's not basically what you're carrying. It's what you can. It's how you bear it. It's not what you're bearing. It's how you bear it. That's a Stoic phrase, and
Yeah,
I think that's a great example of how we can uh, use what we're carrying to develop as individuals.
great. Is there a book that had a major influence on your life that made maybe change your perspective on things and was fundamental in who you are today?
So again, there's been books at each stage of my life that have been crucial. I think the situation I'm in at the moment is I'm very uh, focused on Stoicism as a philosophy. So I would suggest to anyone who wants to look at philosophy is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is a fantastic book. It's just a way of looking at the world that will give you some sort of clarity. It's like, for example, if you're looking at other people, just one that came to mind, and you're looking at all the weaknesses they have, why not instead of look at the good parts of each person? This one's generosity, this one's drive and determination, this one's charisma, whatever it's going to be. There's so many things that you can look at. Positive. Get up in the morning. Yeah, look, you're alive. You know, you should still be happy to be alive. It's not what happens to you; it's how you bear it. There's loads of good quotes in there that I think if you understand what they really mean, it will give you a really good mental frame to move forward with. And that's half the battle, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. I think it's easy to look at all the negative stuff and complain and make excuses. And I think it's important to, change our mindset and have that, positive manifestation and live life with enthusiasm and all the glory instead of dwelling over the negative. I think that could help with a better life. So I love all that and looking forward to reading that book. So coming down to the end of our show, how can people follow you or reach out to you?
So Vanquish Transformational Coaching is the coaching side to help individuals who maybe aren't in the right headspace to get into that headspace. And it's not about me telling you things, because this is where people get things wrong. I'm not going to tell you to go and live in Australia for 2 years and get a job doing this and then move to America and find a girlfriend. And it's about understanding what you want on an individual basis. And I'm here to try and ask you the right questions to get that information out. And then you will come to the realization this is essentially what I want. So that's probably the first place. In terms, I'm sure you're going to put links up anyway. In terms of the book, Become a Person of Values is obviously the first book. I've got 2 more coming out. One should be out in the next few months. That's a question a day that we need to ask ourselves. So first question might be, where do I want to be in 3 to 5 years? You then write down your answer. There's then a paragraph from me about, have you thought about this? Why do you want this? X, Y, and Z. And then a second page, blank page. So you can really build out a good answer. And every day there's going to be one, and it's going to be a full year's worth, basically, of questions. So It's going to be a journal. The third book, which I'm currently writing, is about quotes. So some of these Stoic quotes, some from obviously the American forefounders, loads of good quotes that I give my interpretation about what it means and how you can apply it. So that's again going to be a quote a day. And I think the reason that I like the quote a day or question a day is it's not too taxing on the system, and it goes in line with my philosophy of taking things one bite at a time. People don't like to read, do they? Because they're like, oh, when am I going to find time? All you need to read is 1 page a day and you're going to read the book. And that's it.
Yeah.
Nice and simple.
Same thing, with practicing for a marathon, right? We take it one step at a time, we build the endurance, and just everything we benefit from just making that progress every day. I think it, goes back to our topic, finding your purpose. As long as you're moving forward in life, you're winning. And
This is it.
I really enjoyed our talk today on your insight and your experience. I'm looking forward to reading all of your books and following your journey moving forward. And I was very enlightened by our topic today, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And as you say, the climbing of a mountain begins with a single step. So just take that step, and it will become easier every time.
Yeah, and you'll find your path to a better life. Ask everybody to like, follow, and share, and help us spread the word. Jeevan, thank you for your time. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me on.